The story begins in a land where the sun scorches the earth with relentless intensity, where the horizon shimmers with heat and the air carries a faint scent of dust and salt. Ancient Babylon, perched along the fertile crescent of the Euphrates, was a city of towering walls and monumental ambition. Its streets, lined with mud brick and baked stone, echoed with the rhythm of life, merchants calling their wares, priests chanting in the temples, and the distant clatter of wheels on hard-packed earth. Yet, among this vast expanse of human enterprise and civilization, there emerged one creation so extraordinary, so defiant of nature itself, that it would ignite imaginations for millennia. This was the Hanging Gardens, a marvel that, according to the whispers of history, soared like a green oasis into the sky, suspended above the arid land. The tale begins with King Nebuchadnezzar II, a ruler known for both his ambition and his vision. He governed a kingdom that spanned from the banks of the Euphrates to the edges of distant deserts. His empire was one of power, yet behind the grandeur of conquest lay a quieter, more intimate motivation. It is said that his queen, Ames of Media, longed for the mountains of her homeland, the rolling green hills that contrasted sharply with the stark landscape of Babylon. She wept for the forests she had left behind, for the rivers that sang to her in the distance. Nebuchadnezzar, seeing her sorrow, declared that if she could not return to the mountains, then the mountains would come to her. This declaration set in motion an undertaking of unprecedented scale. The Hanging Gardens were not merely gardens. They were an engineering enigma. Imagine terraces stacked like the steps of a colossal ziggurat, each layer overflowing with lush vegetation. Trees and shrubs, exotic flowers, and creeping vines clung to terraces that seemed to float in the sky. Streams of water, drawn from the Euphrates, defied gravity to nourish the heights above. Ancient texts, fragmented and often contradictory, describe devices, Archimedes' screws or primitive water-lifting machines, that might have transported water upward, a technology astonishing for its era. Some historians suggest these methods were barely believable even to the people who witnessed them. Yet, for all the wonder that the gardens inspired, their existence is shrouded in mystery. Unlike other monuments of Babylon, which leave traces in the earth and in clay tablets, the Hanging Gardens vanish into ambiguity. No definitive archaeological evidence has been unearthed. Some suggest that seismic tremors or catastrophic floods might have erased their foundations. Others argue that the gardens existed not in Babylon at all, but in Nineveh, misattributed over centuries of transcription and translation. And then, there are those who claim the Hanging Gardens never existed, that they were a poetic legend, a metaphor for human longing, documented by historians who were captivated by the idea of beauty suspended in defiance of reality. As we examine the accounts left by ancient chroniclers, a pattern emerges, a fascination not merely with the gardens themselves, but with the audacity they represented. Strabo, a Greek geographer, wrote centuries later of Babylon's astonishing feats, describing terraces rising high above the city, filled with trees and vines, with water flowing through channels to sustain them. Philo of Byzantium spoke of the ingenuity of machines capable of lifting water into the air, a feat that seemed miraculous even in his time. These were not idle tales. They were attempts to document something extraordinary, something that challenged the natural order. To understand the significance of the Hanging Gardens, one must step beyond the physicality of the structures. These gardens, if they truly existed, were a convergence of ambition, emotion, and intellect. They represented a human desire to impose harmony upon a chaotic world, to recreate paradise in the midst of aridity and stone. They were both a monument to love and an experiment in engineering. Consider the symbolism: terraces rising layer by layer, each level a deliberate step toward the heavens, a metaphor perhaps for aspiration, for the human yearning to transcend limitations. The city itself was a canvas for ambition. Babylon's walls, among the most formidable of the ancient world, enclosed streets that twisted and turned, leading to temples, marketplaces, and palaces. It was a city designed to awe, to assert dominance over both the land and the imagination of those who traversed it. And yet, amid these walls of power, the hanging gardens were private, an intimate gift from a king to a queen. They were a reminder that even the greatest empires were sustained not only by armies and commerce but by personal longing and the human capacity for beauty. Modern researchers face a paradox. Babylon leaves traces, bricks stamped with royal insignia, inscriptions detailing laws and conquests, but the gardens themselves elude the archaeologist's gaze. Some suggest that the water system described by ancient sources might have been possible through a series of pumps and aqueducts, sophisticated beyond what we traditionally attribute to the era. Others point to inconsistencies in historical texts, the lapses of centuries, and translation errors that might have conflated memory and imagination. Yet, the persistence of the story suggests something more than mere fantasy. Why would multiple historians, across cultures and centuries, recount the gardens with such reverence if they were nothing but a legend? Even the question of location is contested. Babylon sits along the Euphrates, fertile yet prone to shifts in the river's course, and subject to floods that could reshape the landscape in days. Nineveh, by contrast, offered a different geography, with terrain more conducive to creating terraces with advanced irrigation. Some scholars hypothesize that later writers confused these cities, attributing Nineveh's verdant innovations to Babylon, a city already celebrated for its grandeur. Such possibilities do not diminish the power of the narrative, they only deepen the mystery. As we delve deeper, it becomes clear that the hanging gardens embody an intersection of human ingenuity and the unknown. They challenge our understanding of ancient capabilities, prompting questions that remain unanswered to this day. Were the gardens a tangible reality, meticulously constructed through engineering marvels? Or were they an allegory, an expression of longing and love, a poetic vision etched into the consciousness of history? Perhaps the truth lies somewhere in between, where fragments of reality mingle with the imagination of chroniclers and dreamers. The more one contemplates the hanging gardens, the more one senses a hidden dialogue between the past and the present. The terraces, the water-lifting devices, the verdant heights, all suggest a civilization capable of feats we often deem impossible for their time. And yet, the absence of definitive evidence whispers a cautionary note. Some knowledge may have been lost to time, swept away by rivers, buried beneath layers of sand and ruin, or deliberately erased by history itself. In this uncertainty lies the power of the story. The hanging gardens endure, not merely as structures of brick and water, but as symbols of aspiration, beauty, and the human quest to defy the limits imposed by nature and circumstance. But what truly captivates scholars and dreamers alike is the tension between existence and memory. If the hanging gardens were real, their disappearance challenges our understanding of history, prompting inquiry into natural disasters, human neglect, or the fragility of monumental achievement. If they were imaginary, the question becomes equally profound. Why would a society invest such narrative energy into a creation that never physically existed? And what does this tell us about our own perceptions of history, of beauty, and of the truths we choose to remember? As dusk falls over the ruins of Babylon, The wind carries the faintest echo of life that may have once existed among the terraces. One can imagine the scent of exotic flowers mingling with the dust, the sound of water cascading from terrace to terrace, and the queen, gazing upward, seeing in her mind's eye the mountains she left behind. It is a vision that blurs the line between memory and reality, a haunting testament to human desire and ingenuity. And yet, the ultimate question remains, suspended like the gardens themselves. If such a marvel existed, how could it vanish so completely, leaving nothing but speculation and wonder in its wake? And if it never existed, why does the world continue to search for traces, as though some hidden truth insists on being discovered? The mystery of the Hanging Gardens deepens as we attempt to reconstruct their reality from fragments of ancient memory. Babylon, despite its prominence, leaves behind tantalizingly little in terms of direct evidence. Clay tablets, inscribed with cuneiform, describe the grandeur of the city, the opulence of its palaces, and the achievements of Nebuchadnezzar II. Yet references to the gardens are sparse, scattered, and often secondhand, as if the more extraordinary the claim, the more it eluded concrete record. Some scholars propose that this scarcity is not accidental. Perhaps the gardens were intended as an intimate marvel, a private spectacle, visible only to a select few, shielded from the eyes of ordinary citizens. If so, their disappearance would be less a mystery of destruction and more a deliberate design, a monument fleeting by nature, meant to exist in memory and imagination as much as in stone and soil. Accounts from Greek and Roman historians describe the gardens in varying detail, each account adding both illumination and complication. Strabo, writing in the 1st century BCE, speaks of terraces that rise, like mountains, with trees that appear to float above the city. Philo of Byzantium marvels at the ingenuity of pumps that could lift water to impossible heights, providing irrigation for flora that would otherwise wither in Babylon's heat. Yet, these descriptions are paradoxical. They are vivid, almost cinematic in their detail, but they offer no measurements, no precise locations, no physical clues that would allow modern archaeology to verify them. Some researchers have attempted to reconcile these accounts with what we know of Mesopotamian engineering. Babylon was a city of canals, aqueducts, and artificial lakes. The Euphrates could be diverted, channeled, and manipulated with remarkable sophistication. Terraces could theoretically be irrigated through a combination of pumps, water wheels, and gravity-fed channels. But even the most optimistic reconstruction reveals a staggering technical challenge. To lift thousands of liters of water to a height of 20 or 30 meters daily, sustaining lush trees and gardens under the scorching sun, would require machinery and planning that rivaled anything known from the period. And yet, the persistence of these tales suggests that the ancients witnessed something extraordinary, or believed that they did. Then there is the question of scale. How vast were the Hanging Gardens? Some sources suggest a compact arrangement of several terraces, while others imply a sprawling complex covering acres of elevated landscape. If we are to imagine the latter, the engineering feat becomes even more confounding. Massive terraces, immense irrigation systems, the weight of earth and vegetation, all supported without the benefit of modern materials or reinforced concrete. And yet, in the imaginations of Nebuchadnezzar's contemporaries, the gardens were real enough to inspire awe, poetry, and speculation. We are left, therefore, with a tantalizing duality. The gardens exist simultaneously in history and myth. They occupy the liminal space where human aspiration meets the limits of technology, where love drives innovation and imagination shapes memory. They are a testament to the possibility that some ancient civilizations may have achieved feats we still cannot fully comprehend. And they challenge our assumptions about the past, reminding us that human creativity has always been capable of astonishing, almost impossible, achievements. Beyond engineering, the Hanging Gardens carry symbolic significance. The story of Nebuchadnezzar and Amy's is more than a tale of love. It is a meditation on longing, adaptation, and the human desire to reshape the world according to our needs and desires. Amy's homesickness reflects a universal truth. The human spirit is inextricably bound to place, to the natural world, to landscapes that shape our memory and imagination. And Nebuchadnezzar's response, the creation of mountains in the middle of a desert city, illustrates a remarkable vision that love, ambition, and ingenuity can defy not only natural limitations but historical expectation. Yet, as the centuries passed, the fate of the gardens became increasingly uncertain. Babylon itself experienced upheaval, invasion, and decay. The city fell to the Persians, then to the Greeks, and eventually to the sands of time. Earthquakes shook the region, rivers shifted course, and buildings crumbled. Some historians suggest that the Hanging Gardens succumbed to these natural forces, their terraces collapsing, their water channels silting up, their vegetation consumed by fire or flood. Others propose a more insidious disappearance. As dynasties changed and priorities shifted, the gardens may have been deliberately dismantled, their materials repurposed, their memory preserved only in stories. The question of location continues to haunt modern scholarship. In the mid-20th century, archaeologists searching the ruins of Babylon uncovered traces of terraces and canal systems, yet none definitively match the descriptions of the gardens. This has led some to propose that the legendary Hanging Gardens were actually located in Nineveh, the Assyrian capital hundreds of kilometers to the north. Sennacherib, an Assyrian king, is recorded to have created extensive gardens with aqueduct-fed terraces, structures that bear striking resemblance to Greek and Roman descriptions of the Hanging Gardens. Could it be that Babylon's gardens were a borrowed memory, a conflation of distant wonders, or that historians misattributed the marvel to a more famous city? Even the question of whether the gardens were entirely real does not diminish their power. Perhaps they exist in a state of semi-reality, a fusion of fact and imagination, a construct of collective memory. Ancient chroniclers may have observed extraordinary gardens, embellished their accounts, and transmitted them across generations. Over time, the narrative solidified, gaining the aura of legend while retaining the plausibility of historical record. In this sense, the gardens become less a monument of stone and water, and more a monument of human consciousness, the desire to preserve beauty, to awe the senses, and to reach towards something transcendent. The philosophical implications are equally compelling. If a civilization as old as Babylon could conceptualize, and perhaps construct, something so intricate and seemingly impossible, what does this suggest about the limits of human potential? What forgotten knowledge might have existed, technologies, techniques, or understandings lost to time, leaving us with tantalizing fragments but never the complete picture? And if the gardens were entirely imaginary, what does their enduring legacy tell us about the power of storytelling, the way humans encode longing, devotion, and achievement into narrative that survives millennia? As night falls over the desert, and the stars begin to puncture the darkness above the ruins of Babylon, one can almost sense the faint outline of terraces suspended in the air. A soft wind might carry the imagined scent of flowering trees, the gentle splash of water trickling down from one level to the next. It is a vision that blurs the boundary between history and dream, between tangible reality and collective memory. And it forces a deeper reflection. Whether the hanging gardens were real or imagined, their story endures precisely because it speaks to something universal in the human experience, the desire to create beauty, to defy limits, and to leave a mark that outlasts our own lives. And yet, even as we explore these possibilities, a lingering question remains, more unsettling than any material mystery. If civilizations of such sophistication existed, capable of feats that challenge our understanding, what else has been lost to the passage of time? How much of human achievement lies buried beneath ruins, misremembered by history, or erased entirely? And if the gardens themselves were a form of encoded knowledge, a message from a civilization that sought to transcend mortality through memory and imagination, then what truths lie hidden in the shadows of history, waiting to be rediscovered, or perhaps deliberately concealed? To imagine the hanging gardens is to imagine an extraordinary feat of engineering in an ancient world that seems almost indifferent to such ambition. Consider the logistics alone. Massive terraces, each layered with soil heavy enough to support trees, flowers, and shrubs, stretching skyward across multiple levels. Water had to flow consistently, defying gravity, reaching heights that would challenge engineers even today. Some researchers speculate that a form of chain pump or screw-driven system may have been employed, devices capable of lifting water from the Euphrates into elevated reservoirs. Others propose more exotic possibilities, suggesting technologies lost to time, remnants of knowledge deliberately concealed or forgotten after the collapse of Babylonian civilization. We must imagine the gardens not as a static structure but as a living, breathing ecosystem. Plants require not only water but also careful maintenance, pruning, replacement, protection from pests and the harsh sun. The caretakers of the hanging gardens, if they existed as described, would have needed an intimate understanding of botany, climate, and hydraulics. Ancient texts hint at this sophistication. Some inscriptions suggest the presence of skilled engineers and gardeners, specialists who understood how to maintain terraces, direct water flow, and sustain an elevated environment. If true, this points to a society that was not only ambitious in its aesthetic vision but remarkably advanced in practical knowledge. The very materials used for construction raise questions. Mud brick and baked clay, standard for Babylonian architecture, would have been insufficient alone to support such weight. Could the Babylonians have employed a hybrid technique, combining earth with reinforced structures, or using wooden frameworks hidden within the terraces? And if so, what became of these materials after centuries of neglect, invasion, and flood? Some archaeologists suggest that traces may have been dismantled for reuse, repurposed for other projects, leaving no tangible evidence of the gardens themselves. Others argue that even subtle traces, buried beneath layers of silt and debris, might yet remain undiscovered. Beyond the technical aspects, the hanging gardens are steeped in symbolic resonance. Terraces rising skyward evoke mountains, artificial peaks in a desert expanse. Water flowing upward defies not only gravity but expectation, as if the natural order itself were subject to human will. And the act of creating such a garden for a beloved queen carries a psychological weight, revealing the intersection of emotion, power, and artistry. Amidus' longing for the mountains becomes a narrative device, linking human desire with monumental creation. The gardens, in this sense, function simultaneously as a physical structure, a symbol of devotion, and a testament to human ingenuity. Ancient accounts suggest that the gardens were more than a series of terraces, they were an immersive experience. One can envision winding stairways, shaded alcoves, and the scent of jasmine, myrrh, and cedar mingling in the dry air. Water trickled through channels, creating the soft, persistent murmur of streams above the bustling city below. Birds may have nested among the branches, their songs adding life to this elevated paradise. The visual and sensory impact would have been profound, a stark contrast to the harshness of Babylon's environment, offering a space of refuge, contemplation, and wonder. Yet, even as we imagine such scenes, the question of authenticity persists. Archaeological surveys in Babylon reveal palaces, walls, and canal systems, but no definitive structures that can be directly linked to the gardens. This has led some scholars to propose that the Hanging Gardens, as described, were a literary construct, inspired perhaps by actual gardens elsewhere. Sennacherib's Nineveh, with its terraced aqueducts and lush plantings, closely matches classical descriptions. Could it be that Greek and Roman historians, writing centuries later, conflated these accounts with Babylon, a city already synonymous with grandeur? Or was Babylon itself home to a smaller, more intimate garden, whose reputation grew into legend over time? The very act of questioning the garden's existence reveals a deeper insight. Ancient history is rarely absolute. It is a palimpsest of memory, myth, and interpretation. Stories evolve, details are lost or amplified, and what survives may be less the event itself than the human response to it. In the case of the Hanging Gardens, the lack of definitive evidence does not diminish the story, it enhances it, allowing imagination, speculation, and philosophical reflection to fill the gaps. We are also confronted with the idea that the gardens may have been intentionally ephemeral. Could it be that Nebuchadnezzar or his successors built a structure meant to last only a few decades, designed to astonish temporarily and then vanish, leaving only memory and legend? This raises unsettling questions about the purpose of monumental creation. Was the ultimate value of the gardens in their permanence, or in their ability to inspire wonder, devotion, and reflection while they existed? Perhaps the garden's greatest achievement was not the soil, water, or architecture, but the human response it elicited, an enduring story that transcends the physical. The disappearance of the gardens may also be entwined with natural catastrophe. Babylon lay in a seismically active region. Earthquakes could have collapsed terraces, fractured irrigation systems, and destabilized the structure. Floods from the Euphrates could have eroded foundations and washed away soil. Over centuries, successive invasions and neglect would have compounded the damage. And yet, these practical explanations do not fully satisfy the mind's curiosity, for they fail to account for the persistence of the tale across centuries, cultures, and texts. The gardens endure in memory precisely because they resist full explanation. Beyond archaeology and engineering lies the realm of philosophy and myth. The Hanging Gardens are a bridge between reality and imagination, a place where human longing is made manifest. They speak to a desire to transcend limitations, to create beauty that defies climate, gravity, and mortality. They remind us that human history is not only a record of events and structures but also a chronicle of aspiration, wonder, and storytelling. The gardens may be gone, but their essence survives in our fascination, in our continued questioning, and in the images we construct in our minds when we read descriptions or hear the tales of ancient historians. And yet, the gardens provoke another, more haunting inquiry. If civilizations capable of such sophistication existed, what other marvels might have been lost to time? How many achievements, technologies, and creations lie buried, waiting to be rediscovered, or perhaps intentionally hidden from history? the story of the Hanging Gardens becomes not only a meditation on beauty and loss but also a reminder of the fragility of human knowledge and the ephemeral nature of even the most extraordinary accomplishments. As the sun sets over the ruins, casting long shadows across cracked walls and dried riverbeds, one can almost sense the ghost of the gardens, terraces rising in the imagination, water trickling down invisible channels, leaves rustling in an unseen breeze. The boundary between what was and what is imagined becomes blurred, and the mind is left with a single, persistent question. In a world where even the impossible seems possible, what truths remain hidden just beyond our reach, waiting for the patient eye to uncover them? And amid this uncertainty, one cannot help but wonder, if the Hanging Gardens were indeed a feat of human ingenuity, what lessons do they hold for us now, in an age where technology has advanced far beyond anything Nebuchadnezzar could have imagined, yet human ambition remains subject to the same limitations, the same fragility, the same impermanence? The legend of the Hanging Gardens stretches far beyond the limits of Babylon's walls, resonating across centuries and cultures, echoing through the corridors of human imagination. In classical texts, they appear almost as a philosophical emblem, a symbol of human aspiration and longing. Greek and Roman writers, centuries removed from the events they describe, depict the gardens not merely as a physical marvel but as a manifestation of the human desire to harmonize nature and civilization. This blending of practical achievement and poetic idealization elevates the Hanging Gardens into a realm where fact and myth converge, leaving us to navigate a delicate line between reality and imagination. Consider the cultural significance of green spaces in ancient societies. In Mesopotamia, the harsh sun and arid plains made vegetation a rarity, a precious resource. Gardens were more than aesthetic. They were sacred spaces, imbued with spiritual resonance. Water was life, and the controlled flow of water became an expression of mastery over nature. Within this context, the Hanging Gardens were not simply a collection of trees and terraces. They were a statement of power, ingenuity, and reverence. The ability to create an oasis in the heart of a desert city was both practical and symbolic, demonstrating dominion over the elements while offering a form of transcendence for those who walked among its shaded terraces. Mythology intertwines seamlessly with history here. Some scholars propose that the gardens were designed with cosmological symbolism in mind. Terraces rising layer by layer could mirror the Mesopotamian conception of the universe, earth, heavens, and the intermediary spaces where gods and mortals interact. The flowing water might represent rivers of life, channels connecting human existence to divine order. Amida's presence in these gardens, longing for the mountains of her homeland, reinforces this connection. Her desire is both personal and cosmic, a yearning for a landscape that connects her to memory, emotion, and, perhaps, to the very order of creation itself. The narrative of the Hanging Gardens also offers insight into the psychology of memory and storytelling. Over time, as eyewitness accounts faded and histories were transcribed by generations removed from the original events, embellishment was inevitable. What might have been a smaller, more practical garden in Babylon could have expanded in retellings into a grand, terraced paradise touching the sky. In this way, the gardens serve as a lens through which we can examine how civilizations construct memory, idealize the past, and encode values into narrative. They are not merely a monument of stone and water, they are a monument of imagination, memory, and aspiration. Archaeological investigation, though frustratingly inconclusive, continues to provide tantalizing clues. Excavations along the Euphrates reveal foundations of structures capable of supporting elevated terraces. Traces of ancient aqueducts and canals suggest that Babylonian engineers had developed sophisticated methods for moving water. Some speculate that remnants of the garden's irrigation system may lie hidden beneath layers of mud and debris waiting to be uncovered. Yet, the absence of definitive proof only amplifies the garden's mystique. Their story thrives in the space between certainty and speculation, in the shadowy intersection of what might have been and what can never be confirmed. The endurance of the hanging gardens in the human imagination also reflects a broader fascination with the intersection of love, ambition, and creativity. Nebuchadnezzar's motivation, his desire to comfort a queen and recreate the mountains of her homeland, places emotion at the center of monumental creation. This human element distinguishes the gardens from other architectural wonders of the era. While ziggurats and palaces proclaimed power, the gardens spoke of empathy, devotion, and aesthetic sensibility. They remind us that even in the exercise of supreme authority, the human heart can shape the material world in profound and unexpected ways. The gardens' ambiguity, whether they were physical, partially real, or entirely imagined, also invites reflection on the nature of knowledge and history. Every civilization leaves traces, inscriptions, artifacts, ruins. Yet some creations, for reasons practical, philosophical, or political, leave little to no physical evidence. In this sense, the Hanging Gardens become a case study in the limits of historical reconstruction. They challenge historians to question how knowledge is transmitted, preserved, and transformed over time. What we call history is always a selection, a narrative shaped by survival, interpretation, and memory. The gardens persist not only in fragments of text but in the curiosity and wonder they continue to evoke. We can also explore the garden's place within the broader context of Mesopotamian and Near Eastern culture. The city of Babylon was a hub of innovation and exchange. Its walls enclosed not only markets and temples but ideas, technologies, philosophical concepts, and religious practices that influenced neighboring regions. In this context, the Hanging Gardens can be seen as part of a continuum of experimentation and creativity. They were an ambitious attempt to reconcile human desire with environmental constraints, a precursor in some ways to modern ideas of landscape engineering and urban planning. The mythological dimension of the gardens grows even more compelling when considered alongside biblical and pre-biblical texts. Some references suggest that elevated gardens and sacred terraces were associated with divine favor, places where humans could encounter the divine through the beauty and order of nature. Could the Hanging Gardens have been intended, at least in part, as a symbolic bridge between the earthly and the celestial, a space where the king and queen, or perhaps even priests and rulers, could contemplate higher truths while immersed in human-made paradise? Such speculation is, by necessity, tentative, yet it illuminates the profound ways in which architecture, nature, and spirituality can intersect. Despite their disappearance, the Hanging Gardens have shaped human perception of beauty, ambition, and possibility. They exemplify the human drive to transcend environment and circumstance, to construct order where chaos might otherwise prevail. Their story is a reminder that the greatest achievements are not always preserved in stone. Sometimes they survive in memory, in imagination, and in the collective consciousness of a culture. In this sense, the garden's vanishing becomes a feature, not a flaw, a testament to the impermanence of human endeavor and the enduring power of aspiration. And yet, one cannot escape the unsettling question that shadows every inquiry into the Hanging Gardens. If such ingenuity was possible in the ancient world, why did it vanish so completely? Why has no definitive evidence emerged despite centuries of searching, despite the meticulous records left by Babylonians, Greeks, and Romans? Does the absence of material proof indicate natural disaster, human neglect, or intentional erasure? Or does it point to a deeper, almost philosophical truth, that some creations are meant to exist only in memory, imagination, and legend, defying the permanence that so often defines human ambition? As night settles again over the ruins of Babylon, the imagination reconstructs what the eye cannot see. One envisions terraces rising in the darkness, lit perhaps by lamps or moonlight, water cascading in hidden channels, the scent of flowers mingling with dust and wind. The city below sleeps, oblivious to the wonder above. And in that moment, the hanging gardens feel more real than ever, not as a structure of brick and water, but as a monument of possibility, a reminder that human vision can reach beyond the constraints of environment, time, and memory. Yet, even as we reflect, a more profound question emerges, one that transcends history, engineering, and mythology. If the Hanging Gardens were a fleeting marvel, a creation that existed perhaps only for a moment in time, what does that tell us about the value of human endeavor? Is the measure of achievement permanence, or is it the capacity to inspire awe, to shape imagination, and to leave a trace in the collective memory of civilization? The question of the Hanging Gardens' disappearance is as enigmatic as their existence. Over centuries, historians, archaeologists, and dreamers have grappled with theories, each more compelling, and yet none definitive. Some propose a natural end, earthquakes that shook Babylon, destabilizing foundations, collapsing terraces, and rupturing water channels. Seismic activity in the region is well documented. A city built of mud brick and layered terraces would have been vulnerable to tremors capable of toppling what no human hands could reconstruct. In this view, the gardens were a brilliant experiment in engineering and love, destroyed not by neglect but by the unforgiving forces of nature. Floods from the Euphrates present another plausible scenario. Babylon's canals, lifelines for irrigation and trade, could become destructive agents during seasonal surges. Rising waters may have washed away foundations, eroded terrace walls, or rendered irrigation systems inoperable. Yet even these practical explanations cannot account for why the gardens vanished so completely, leaving behind no trace, no remnants of extraordinary hydraulic devices, no soil layers uniquely engineered to sustain a vertical forest. Such total erasure is almost impossible to reconcile with the known resilience of Mesopotamian structures. Then there is the possibility of human agency. Invasions, wars, and regime changes swept through Babylon repeatedly. Looting, dismantling, and repurposing of construction materials were common practices. A palace, a temple, a ziggurat could be partially or wholly deconstructed to build anew. Could the gardens have been sacrificed to the pragmatism of successive rulers, their terraces stripped, their channels filled in, leaving nothing but memory and legend? Some historians argue that, given their intimate nature, private, almost secretive, the gardens may have been more vulnerable to human erasure than the city's defensive walls or monumental temples. Yet even as we consider these tangible explanations, a more unsettling possibility emerges. The gardens may never have existed in Babylon at all. Classical texts suggest that Sennacherib of Nineveh, the Assyrian king, built a terraced garden, irrigated with advanced aqueducts, that matches many descriptions attributed to Babylon. Could it be that Greek and Roman historians, centuries after the fact, conflated Babylon with Nineveh, attributing Assyrian innovation to the more famous city? If so, the Hanging Gardens of Babylon might be a kind of historical misattribution, a legend growing from the roots of truth, nourished by the fascination of storytellers and the allure of Babylonian grandeur. The persistence of the story despite the lack of physical evidence is remarkable. Multiple sources, separated by centuries and geography, refer to the gardens with awe and specificity. Strabo, Philo of Byzantium, and Diodorus Siculus all mention terraces, trees, and miraculous irrigation. This consistency suggests that something extraordinary existed, or that human imagination is remarkably capable of creating shared mythologies that transcend reality. Even if the gardens were purely allegorical, they served a purpose, encoding values of love, ingenuity, and aspiration into the historical consciousness. The philosophical dimension of the disappearance is equally profound. What does it mean for a civilization to create something so monumental only for it to vanish? If human achievement is ultimately ephemeral, is its value diminished, or does impermanence intensify the wonder it inspires? In contemplating the Hanging Gardens, we confront the tension between material reality and human perception. A structure may disappear physically, but its story, its memory, and its symbolic resonance endure, influencing generations who never saw it with their own eyes. The debate over the gardens also illuminates the nature of historical knowledge itself. Ancient records are fragmentary, translation errors, political bias, and the selective preservation of texts shape the narrative we inherit. Archaeology, while offering empirical evidence, is limited by what survives beneath layers of sand, silt, and debris. The Hanging Gardens, therefore, exist at the intersection of recorded history and human imagination, a liminal space where uncertainty is not a flaw but a defining feature. Their elusiveness forces us to confront the limits of knowledge, challenging the assumption that what is not physically preserved is less real or less important. Beyond technical and historical speculation, the gardens provoke reflection on human ambition. To conceive, plan, and perhaps construct such terraces in the heart of a desert city is an act of audacity. The gardens symbolize the desire to elevate, to transform, to reconcile harsh reality with aesthetic and emotional aspiration. Whether they existed or not, they exemplify humanity's compulsion to leave behind creations that defy environment, time, and mortality, a compulsion that persists in every culture, from monumental pyramids to skyscrapers, from art to literature. The disappearance also invites reflection on memory and legacy. If the gardens were destroyed by natural catastrophe, human neglect, or deliberate misattribution, their story endured because it resonated with universal truths: longing, ingenuity, love, and the pursuit of beauty. The persistence of the narrative underscores a paradox. Physical permanence is optional, but intellectual and emotional impact can endure indefinitely. In this way, the Hanging Gardens become more than an archaeological enigma. They are a meditation on the enduring power of ideas and imagination. Consider the lessons embedded within the legend. The gardens embody a principle that transcends history. The attempt to impose order and beauty upon a hostile environment is a defining human impulse. Nebuchadnezzar's alleged response to Amidus' longing illustrates an intersection of emotion and intellect, of desire and technological ambition. The act of creation becomes a mirror for the human condition itself. We seek to reconcile longing with reality, imagination with material constraints, ephemeral moments with enduring significance. And yet, even as we contemplate these ideas, an unsettling thought persists. If such achievement was possible, how many other wonders have been lost entirely? What civilizations, technologies, or feats might have vanished without record, leaving only hints in the dust, whispers in texts, or echoes in myth? The Hanging Gardens may be the most famous of these losses, but they hint at a much larger truth. Human history is a tapestry woven as much from absence and speculation as from material evidence. As the sun dips below the horizon and the ruins of Babylon are bathed in a warm, fading light, the mind is drawn upward. One can almost imagine terraces suspended in the twilight, their foliage rustling in a breeze that has not touched the earth for centuries. Water trickles silently through invisible channels. The scent of unknown flowers permeates the air, and the city below slumbers, unaware of the wonder it once cradled. In this quiet, the Hanging Gardens are neither fully real nor fully imagined. They exist in the liminal space between memory and myth, a reminder that human creativity often reaches beyond the confines of permanence, leaving traces that endure in perception, if not in stone. And amid the contemplation of loss, misattribution, and enduring legend, an even deeper question emerges. If the Hanging Gardens were indeed a blend of reality and imagination, what does this reveal about the human need for wonder, for beauty, and for narratives that exceed the limitations of lived experience? Are the gardens a monument to engineering, love, and ambition, or are they a mirror reflecting the boundless capacity of the human mind to dream, to remember, and to create meaning even where material certainty is absent? The Hanging Gardens of Babylon, whether fully real or partially imagined, occupy a space not just in history but in the collective consciousness of humanity. They are a lens through which we confront our own relationship with ambition, beauty, and impermanence. Imagine a king, gazing across a barren city, yet envisioning terraces of greenery, trees rising toward the sky, water cascading in controlled harmony. This is not merely architecture, it is philosophy incarnate, a statement that human will can challenge the apparent impossibility of the environment, and that emotional motivation can propel innovation beyond ordinary limits. Some scholars have drawn parallels between the gardens and sacred spaces across the ancient world. Elevated gardens, terraces, and mountains often symbolize a connection between earth and heavens, human and divine. In Babylon, a city of ziggurats and temples reaching skyward, such symbolism would have resonated deeply. The act of raising a garden into the sky, creating an oasis suspended above the city, mirrors the spiritual ascent found in many religious traditions, a physical expression of transcendence, aspiration, and divine proximity. The king and queen, walking among these terraces, would have experienced not just the sensory pleasures of shade, fragrance, and flowing water, but also the subtle spiritual resonance of elevation itself. The gardens also invite reflection on the human impulse to immortalize memory. Amy's longing for her homeland transformed personal desire into monumental expression. Her emotion, private and intimate, became the catalyst for public legacy. In this way, the Hanging Gardens are as much a psychological construction as a physical one, a manifestation of the human tendency to externalize memory, longing, and devotion. We are drawn to stories like this because they reveal an essential truth. Our creations, however impermanent, are shaped by the depth of our emotional life, by love, fear, yearning, and hope. The disappearance of the gardens, then, is more than a historical mystery. It is a meditation on impermanence. All human achievement is fleeting when measured against the vast sweep of time. Civilizations rise and fall, rivers change course, earthquakes and floods erase even the most solid structures. And yet, certain creations, monuments of imagination, storytelling, and memory, transcend physical decay. The Hanging Gardens exist not because they survived intact, but because their story resonates across cultures, centuries, and continents. They are proof that endurance is not measured solely in stone, but in the impact on human thought and imagination. This perspective leads us to a philosophical paradox. If something can vanish physically yet remain vivid in the human psyche, what is its true measure of reality? Do the gardens exist because they were made of brick and water, or because they captured the imagination, became embedded in texts, and inspired wonder for generations? Here, the boundary between history and myth dissolves. The Hanging Gardens function simultaneously as historical inquiry, allegory, and symbol, a reminder that human understanding of the past is constructed as much by narrative as by evidence. Some researchers take this even further, exploring the gardens as a metaphor for lost knowledge. Babylon was not merely a city, it was a hub of innovation, mathematics, astronomy, and engineering. The gardens, if real, might represent the apex of a civilization's technical mastery, a fleeting glimpse of abilities that, for reasons lost to time, were never fully transmitted to later generations. If such knowledge existed, what else might have been lost along with the gardens? What skills, ideas, or techniques have vanished because their physical embodiment disappeared? And if they never existed, what does the persistence of their story suggest about the human mind's capacity to create enduring structures of meaning without tangible evidence? The legend also invites introspection on the nature of wonder itself. Modern societies often measure achievement in permanence. Skyscrapers, space stations, and digital networks are celebrated for durability. Yet the Hanging Gardens suggest another paradigm. That awe can be derived from the ephemeral, from moments that exist briefly but resonate indefinitely. Their fleeting nature, their disappearance, enhances their mythic quality. They challenge us to consider that the most profound human creations may not be those that survive intact, but those that endure in imagination, inspiring reflection long after their material forms have vanished. The interplay between love, technology, and ambition within the gardens also offers a rare glimpse into the human condition. It is the emotional impetus, Amidus' longing, Nebuchadnezzar's devotion, that transforms ingenuity into art. The gardens are not merely functional, they are poetic. Every terrace, every water channel, every carefully placed plant becomes a line in a living poem. In this sense, the Hanging Gardens are not just an archaeological curiosity, they are a philosophical statement about the inseparability of emotion, intellect, and creative expression. And yet, as we immerse ourselves in speculation, the gardens confront us with their ultimate mystery, the absence of certainty. Every archaeological hypothesis, every historical account, every interpretation of myth leaves gaps, contradictions, and questions. What was the true scale of the gardens? How exactly did the water reach such heights? Did they vanish through catastrophe, neglect, or were they, at their core, a conceptual marvel rather than a physical one? These questions are not mere academic exercises. They are an invitation to reflect on the fragility of human knowledge and the enduring allure of what is just beyond our grasp. As night envelopes the ruins of Babylon, one can almost sense the gardens suspended in memory. Water trickles in invisible channels, trees sway in imagined wind, and flowers bloom in a space that exists neither entirely in the world nor entirely in imagination. The interplay of light and shadow, perception and reality, memory and history, transforms the Hanging Gardens into something more than a physical structure. They become a meditation on what it means to aspire, to create, and to leave a legacy in a world defined by impermanence. And so, the story of the Hanging Gardens forces us to confront the profoundest questions of civilization. If human achievement is fleeting, what is the measure of greatness? Is it the permanence of stone and brick, or the enduring power to inspire wonder, reflection, and aspiration? And if a creation can vanish completely yet remain vivid in the collective imagination, what does that suggest about the true nature of reality itself, an intricate interplay of matter, memory, and human consciousness? As we arrive at the final contemplation of the Hanging Gardens, the mind is drawn to the interplay between human aspiration and the impermanence of all things. Perhaps this is the true legacy of the gardens, not as a physical structure, but as a symbol, a testament to the boundless capacity of imagination and will. Nebuchadnezzar's ambition, whether realized in stone and water or preserved in narrative alone, reaches across millennia, inviting us to reflect on our own capacity for creation, innovation, and longing. The gardens' enduring allure lies precisely in their ambiguity. They exist in the liminal space between fact and fiction, between history and myth. In this uncertainty, there is a profound lesson. The value of human endeavor is not always measured by permanence. What survives in memory, in inspiration, and in cultural consciousness can be just as significant, if not more so, than what survives in material form. The Hanging Gardens challenge our assumptions about achievement, inviting us to consider the ways in which beauty, ingenuity, and devotion persist beyond the reach of time. Across civilizations, stories of elevated gardens, terraces, and paradisiacal landscapes recur. From Mesopotamia to Persia, from Babylonian ziggurats to the terraced gardens of later empires, humanity has sought to create spaces that transcend the ordinary, that lift the mind and spirit above the mundane. The Hanging Gardens, whether real, partially real, or imagined, serve as a touchstone for this enduring impulse, a reminder that human aspiration is inseparable from our desire to impose harmony on a world often defined by chaos. The philosophical implications extend even further. If the gardens existed, then they represent knowledge and engineering lost to time, a whisper of human capability that the modern world may never fully reconstruct. If they did not exist, they are a triumph of imagination, proving that the human mind can create structures, experiences, and ideas powerful enough to survive millennia without physical evidence. In either case, the Hanging Gardens illuminate a profound truth. Reality is not merely a matter of what is tangible, but of what can inspire, endure, and transform human thought. The legend also poses a spiritual dimension, subtle yet undeniable. Gardens have always been associated with paradise, with the sacred, and with the idealization of nature. In elevating the gardens above the city, Nebuchadnezzar may have been seeking not only to comfort a beloved queen, but to recreate an image of transcendence on earth, a terrestrial reflection of celestial order. The flowing water, the suspended terraces, the harmony of vegetation and architecture all suggest a desire to connect human experience with a higher principle, a longing for perfection in a world governed by imperfection. Even today, the absence of definitive evidence amplifies their mystery. Archaeologists and historians debate, speculate, and search for traces, yet the gardens remain elusive, hidden perhaps beneath layers of silt, misattributed to other cities, or preserved only in fragments of text and imagination. This elusiveness is not a failure of inquiry, it is central to the garden's enduring power. The very questions they provoke, about engineering, history, myth, and memory, become part of the experience of their story. In their absence, they continue to shape thought, inquiry, and imagination. Perhaps this is the ultimate lesson of the Hanging Gardens. Greatness is not solely measured in permanence, but in resonance. A creation may vanish physically, yet its echo can influence human consciousness across centuries. The gardens, whether as a reality or a legend, exemplify this principle. They compel us to consider what we value in human achievement, what we preserve in memory, and how imagination can carry truths that material structures cannot. As the final shadows stretch across the ruins of Babylon, one can almost hear the faint murmur of flowing water, the rustle of leaves in terraces that may have once touched the sky, and the soft sigh of a queen long gone, recalling the mountains of her homeland. The Hanging Gardens endure, not in stone or soil, but in the human need to dream, to aspire, and to reconcile longing with creation. They exist in every story that preserves wonder, in every mind captivated by the improbable, and in every effort to reach beyond the limitations of circumstance. And so, the Hanging Gardens of Babylon remain suspended in time and imagination, a mystery that challenges historians, engineers, philosophers, and dreamers alike. They are a meditation on love, ambition, and the fleeting nature of even the most extraordinary human achievements. Their disappearance, whether by natural disaster, human intervention, or myth-making, only amplifies their power, leaving a void that invites reflection, speculation, and reverence. In the end, we are left with the most haunting question of all. If such a marvel could exist, even for a fleeting moment, what does it reveal about the potential of human civilization, and what other wonders, lost to history, might await rediscovery or remembrance? The Hanging Gardens, real or imagined, serve as a mirror to our own aspirations, a challenge to reach higher, think deeper, and create more boldly, even in the face of impermanence. And perhaps, in the quiet spaces of imagination, the gardens rise again, lush and vibrant, a suspended paradise whispering across time, reminding us that the human capacity for wonder may be the only truly immortal creation.